Hey, welcome to the REC Experience Podcast with Jas Takhar. I am Laura Stewart, Director of Sales and Marketing at REC Canada. I'm also Executive Producer of the REC Experience Podcast. A few months ago, Jas was invited to appear on the Ryan Holtz Show Podcast. Based in Edmonton, Alberta, Ryan is the owner of Ryan Holtz Marketing, a social media and creative agency. Ryan is also a regular contributor of media issues on TV and radio. In this episode, Jas and Ryan discuss marketing using social media and the importance of content creation. Jas opens up about his love of entrepreneurship as a kid and how the newspaper route eventually led to real estate investment and co-founding REC Canada, one of the most successful real estate brokerage firms in the country. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment because we love to read your comments. You can also find all of the social media contacts listed in the description below. So once again, here is Jas featured on the Ryan Holtz Show podcast, hosted by the one and only Ryan Holtz. Enjoy! REC Experience presents Real Estate, Entrepreneurship, Leadership with your host, Jas Takhar. The REC Experience Podcast is now on air.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Ryan Holtz Show Podcast. I always say I have a great guest coming on, but it's really true. I have an amazing guest coming on. We're going to talk a little bit in jam about real estate. We're going to also talk about, podcasting and how to get guests and those almighty interviews. I get hit up so much about guests coming on the show, and some hit ups are just like amazing where I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to reply back. And then others I'm like, you're so damn self-serving. Like you're trying to hide it by being, not self-serving, but I can smell that. I can always smell it. You can smell it right away. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to talk a little bit about him and how he's built his real estate company. How he's also built, kind of a small, I would call it like a media company inside of that company that really generates content to help people out. But my next guest is Jas Takhar, based out in the East Coast. You're based in Toronto, Ontario, Jas?
Right out of Toronto, buddy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jas is an award-winning realtor, forward-thinking leader, cutting-edge entrepreneur. He facilitates over 650 property transactions each year in every asset class with his team that sits comfortably in the top 3 brokerages in Canada. He's a primary content creator of REC and the host of REC Experience Podcast, where he dispenses advice for anyone at any stage of professional expertise. Man, welcome to the show. It's our absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryan, and thank you for all the content and all the guests that you have, because I know you're touching and inspiring a lot of people. You and I crossed paths about almost a year ago this coming August. Not sure if you remember. You reached out to me when you saw an interview that I did with Ryan Serhant. And that was probably the first video I ever put out. You don't know it at the time, but you sent me a DM saying, Jas, man, look, I could tell that you're just getting started. Keep at it, keep consistent. And just hearing that and seeing that coming from a guy like yourself who is so much more deeper into it, it really meant a lot. And I'm happy to say a year later, I'm still at it. And I'm blessed to be on your podcast and very, very grateful. So thank you for having me on.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's kind of weird because I remember reaching out to you, and then I don't think we ever talked again for like a year. And then all of a sudden you actually reach out to me about the podcast, and I'm like, he looks so familiar. And I'm like, I don't know him, but I'm like, I talked to him at some point. We talk to so many people on a daily basis. I'm like, was that a conference? And I'm like, no. So I go in. I'm like, oh my God, this is a blast from the past. I'm like, this is great. That being said, I mean, you reached out, said, hey Ryan, I'd like to come on your podcast. What was it? Like, you do get a lot of people that say, hey man, I want to come on your podcast. There's other people that I say, hey, I'd love to come on your podcast. There's something that about their content that resonates. It's, I like people that I feel are being extremely transparent. I want them to show their good days, their bad days, their in-between days. I love people that show their families and their personal side a bit because, everybody's on the gram trying to live their best life. I'm living my real life, and if you look at my stories, I don't, people are like, wow, Ryan, like that's really you when I meet you. And I'm like, do you know how hard it would be 10 years from now to keep up a fake life? Like it's not going to end well for you. You know what I mean? So I'm a private person, to the contrary of many people, because, with my family, I don't show everything. There's lots that's just for us, but I like people who don't know me to really get a sense of what my priorities are in my life, and I like to try to learn what their priorities are in their life. So what made you reach out? You did mention about, the year ago, but what is it about the podcast that really said, I want to give this guy some of my time?
First and foremost, your energy. I do see your stories on a daily basis. I see all the content that you push out, and it was first and foremost was just the energy. I was like, I just want to be around this guy. Like, I know he's out in Alberta and BC, and I'm out in Toronto, so the chances of us meeting face to face in the short term is going to be tough. But even if I could just be in his presence on a Skype call like this, it's exactly what I wanted to do, man. Like, your energy was awesome. And then when you do some digging, I think that's again the first and foremost is seeing the energy and feeling it. Then when I started digging and seeing your community, like, you comment, like when someone leaves a comment on yours, you reply back. Somebody DMs you, you're busy. Like, you can tell in your stories how busy you are with the family and all you do in terms of content and your day job. Yeah. And for you to reply back, that means a lot, man. And so I think if more people can do that, and anybody listening and watching, something as simple as even like a thanks, appreciate the feedback, appreciate the support, a little fist pump, an emoji, not necessarily poop emojis or anything, but there's some emojis that you can use just to let the other person on the other side know that you heard them. And that's something that you've always done, Ryan. And so that means a lot. And I really want to get onto your podcast, because I'm in the hopes that I can bring value to even one of your viewers or listeners out of the thousands and thousands that you have. Going into the hundreds of thousands, because I know like your reach is very far, and I'm just looking to touch one person, man. There might be someone that says, you know what Jas said or what he does, they can make use of it, and I'm gonna build it brick by brick and day by day.
Well, you said one thing, that really stands out is the replying to comments, and I get like, I like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is kind of probably, I would say, almost my second platform that I really enjoy. And people will, LinkedIn, the sophistication of the type of comments you get is absolutely amazing. People are writing paragraphs back to you. And I always think like, it's almost the equivalent of me if somebody like takes the time to come and meet me and then they're like, hey, Ryan, I just turn my back and walk out of the room. Like, it's one of the most rudest things, disrespectful things you could ever do to somebody. And for somebody, even if it's like, and you see some of the comments, I get people that leave genuine comments. Some people are like, yo, man, that's cool. Thumbs up, prayer hands, whatever. But there's people that go into a story and I'm like, social media for me is all about engaging, interacting, and really trying to build, that rapport with people. And when I created this podcast, it's really deep to my heart because I said, there's, 767,000 podcasts or something like that out there worldwide. Wow, the percentage of them failing is extremely high. But I said, no, I'm going to create something that's really real, that's really grassroots. We want a good production quality, but I didn't want it to be over the top because I feel that, it goes way too far. And if somebody messages me or texts me, they're like, oh my God, man, this guy emailed me back. I'm like, it's me, it's not my assistant. So I tell my wife all the time, when I make a post on social media, I got to sit around my phone for 30 to 60 minutes and actually start responding back. So there's sometimes I just don't post because I'm like, I just don't have the time to respond to the comments. That being said, man, everything you said was absolutely amazing. When you reach
that, Ryan, really quickly to that, because there's something listening, thinking what you do and what I do in terms of posting and putting out content is easy. And what a lot of people don't know is that point that you made, that you sit around afterwards, 30, 60 minutes to make sure that you get back to everyone. Yes. Like that takes work.
Yes.
And it takes commitment, and you're consistent.
My fingers hurt, man. My fingers hurt. All this talk about automation and artificial intelligence. I don't know. My fingers don't feel that right now. They hurt. But you're very right about that. I think it's a great topic. But I kind of go back to the thing, and I'm really passionate about this. I have this book over here called The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene up there, and it's one of my favorite books because it centers around ego. And, I don't have any ego. I really don't. I think we all possess it to some degree. But man, I'm just a dude, you know. I come from extremely humble beginnings. You know, I built everything that I have and own. I've literally built for it. I've worked my ass off for it. And I'm just kind of, I love my life, you know, and I made hard sacrifices. There's that one quote that says, hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life. I made the hard choices, you know, and everybody, you know, when you don't make those hard choices, whether it's when you're 25, 35, 45, 55, it's funny how those hard choices, they're still in your face. They never go away until you walk through them. Once you walk through them, and I always say this, it's only until you live your full self on purpose that life really gets great. It's only when that vulnerability really comes out that's where the impact starts to happen.
And the more experience you get and the older that 100. You get, I'm sure you can attest to it, Ryan, where you come across new challenges, but it's like, I've done this before. You're able to go back into the data bank, so to speak, in your brain and say, you know what, I've gotten through something like this before, or because this is a new challenge, I know I'm going to come across obstacles. And, you know, something I always like to say, and I'm saying it a lot more now, is, are you going to find a way, or are you going to give up because something got in your way? Right? And so, and that space between the event and the outcome, it's your response that's going to determine really what that outcome's going to be. It's a matter of how you're going to respond, right? If you really want it, you know it, man. It's effortless. It looks effortless with what you're doing now, right? Because you really truly are living your passion, and you know, you're self-aware to know what kind of tickles your fancy and what you're. You reverse engineered it, and now it looks effortless.
Well, it does, and it's funny too, though, is that, you know, I had this conversation. Like, my wife is truly my best friend, because 3:30 in the morning we're having our pillow talk. You know, as kids, you're trying to sneak any kind of time you can get. I wake up earlier in the morning just so I can, you know, have some peace and quiet in my home and just kind of, you know, have a coffee, sit down and just enjoy, like, you know. And then once, you know, boom, the kids hit, that's it. But that being said, I think, you know, it's funny. Like, I was just having the conversation the other day with her, and I said, I got to step up my game. Like, I feel like I've done nothing, truthfully. And it's that, you know, satiability where, you know, and I do sometimes like looking at the phone and looking at what other people are doing, because I'm like, holy crap, like, you thought you were doing something. Look at this next person. And I can tell authentic between faking it, you know, and you're just like, it's inspiring, you know. And some people look at that and they get, you know, they become a hater, or they get, you know, kind of pushed down by it. I kind of look at it like, well, this dude or this girl has the same 24 hours in the day that I do. They got 4 kids. What? Like, don't make the excuse. They're doing it still too, right? And you need to really craft that apart. That being said, when I dig into you, when you reached out, the content that you're putting around the real estate business, I think, is extremely important. I think it's extremely smart because, you know, a lot of people who are realtors out there, you know, nobody wants to just chill with a realtor sometimes. Like, as soon as you give them your number, all of a sudden they're blowing up your phone, they're stalking you. You've done a really great organic content strategy that says, you know, I wouldn't mind getting to know this guy. He's giving us so much value up front that maybe you want to do business. And people out there that say, oh my God, Jazzy, you know, this is awesome. I see these cool YouTube videos and Gary Vaynerchuk and the empathy wines and all that. I always think, I'm like, do these people understand the strategy behind this? Yes, it's authentic, and there's no problem, but you know in your head, yo, this is the way we're going to actually accrue new business down the road. We need to give that value up front. We need people to say, oh my God, who is that guy? Who is that team? And it's also that, you know, I'm not a realtor, but if I go to a listing appointment and somebody says, hey, Ryan, why should I pick you to list my house? Well, let me play tape 8, sir. Let me play all these things for you. And they're like, and by the time that even happens, they're already pre-sold because they've already done a little digital deep dive on you. So it's making that, you know, that sale, quote unquote, a lot easier, man.
So much easier. Like I tell my team, so I have a team of 32 realtors with my business partner, Simeon, and, you know, we talk to them on a daily basis. And I always say, look, guys, make it easy for people to buy from you. Don't sell. Like, and I know you go into a store, I go into a store. I hate being pushed to buy a pair of $100, $150 shoes. I do not have the audacity to push somebody to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, I just don't have, like, that's not in me. And so what I'm doing and what I'm really trying to do, and I'm documenting even the ups and downs of me trying to accomplish the content, is I'm going to make it as easy as possible for somebody to use my services. And so, look, anyone can find out how to sell a home online now. You can find out how to invest by yourself. You can find out how to buy a home. You can even legal services, all of that. So the strategy of me saying, you know what, I'm just going to throw it all out there. I'm going to teach people how to buy their own home, knowing that right across the nation of in Canada, only 1 to 2%, it's probably 1.5% of people actually sell their own home. So I'm not worried about, call it the 2%. I'm going to focus on the 98% that always use a realtor. If they like my style, they like the value that I bring up front, great, let's do business. And if not, great, that's okay too. I'm not going to get everyone. But it's, I feel that it's a lot easier for me to just teach people how to do it on their own. And if they want to use our service, fantastic. If not, that's okay as well.
So why real estate for you? How did you get into it? Is this a family business? Is this something that you do? Like, what was the whole inspiration behind getting into real estate? I do love real estate. I do. I love, even the developing aspect of it. I'm a little kid that way. I love when I can see a piece of mud get, all of a sudden dug out, foundation gets put in, everything gets framed up. And to me, I think it's a complete art. And a lot of people do, sometimes you hear those kind of, I call it uneducated little statements about tradespeople. They're like, oh, he's a trades guy. I'm like, you go build a house. Go build a house that doesn't fall down right now. You go do that. Go build Drizzy Drake's home and tell me that does not take some skill to do. Come on.
That's right down the street. It's about 7-8 blocks from where I am right now.
Yeah. So you know what I mean? So what was the inspiration behind it? And kind of what was your journey with that? Were you always a business guy growing up? What would your parents say about you as a kid?
I know. Mostly my dad and mom would say.
As long as you heard that last little, what would your parents say as a kid? I hope you heard that little part.
I got that. So about 25 years of sales and service experience. I wasn't as much into the mud and stuff that you spoke about. In fact, now I really know myself. I have trouble hanging up shelves and stuff. It's just not who I am. I'm not built with that. So about 12, 13 years, when I was 12 and 13, I kind of started knowing that, I'm not going to go very far in school, but I had that in me where I was paper route, getting multiple paper routes. And I always wanted to be in sales and service. So the one thing, and I don't really talk about it much, but I had a hard time in high school. I just barely passed it and got my diploma. Never went into university or college. Okay. The one thing I really stuck with in high school was the co-op program. Our school was lucky enough to have, we were lucky enough to have one in our high school. And I got into a retail store and fell in love with it. I fell in love with the interaction with clients. So I had it with the paper route and some odd jobs, but not really a big scale, not meeting 20, 30, 40 people a day. And I found that really interesting because those 20, 30, 40 people were all unique in some way. And I brought the passion and I started to know quite early, this was probably when I was 16, 17, that I think I'm going to like this. I think I'm able to make it easy for people to buy. Even I kind of knew it at that age. And I wasn't being manipulative. I wasn't pushing people. I think they were actually shocked at the fact that I was always just giving away the information. Like in that store, I was in the footwear department and I wasn't pushy, simple. And because I started to learn that connection, my next job was at CIBC as a sales and service specialist was the title. So I would be taking inbound phone calls. And so Ryan would call in and say, Jas, I want to pay this bill and pay that bill just before online banking started, like in and around September, 2001. And so I helped people get mortgages and lines of credit and loans, and this was done all over the phone. Learned impeccable phone skills at the bank, which was I think it was about a 5 to 6 month training before you were even able to take a phone call. Then I went into luxury car sales for about 3 years. Okay. And then at the age of 23, I felt that real estate was going to be the next step. I personally want to get into real estate from an investing perspective. At a young age, my parents always bought a home and rented out the basement. And so I understood the math on that. Oh, okay. So we rent out the basement, and I think it was like $650 a month. It helps pay the grocery bills and maybe some of the property. Something. And so I understood. My mom was a factory worker. My dad was a cab driver.
Okay.
Actually, into Edmonton, stayed there for about 6 months. And then at that time in 1973, 1974, the job market in Toronto was just bigger. And so he moved to Toronto, and that's when he settled here in Toronto. And so I learned at that age, look, renting out properties is kind of interesting, and it makes sense to me. So I made the move into real estate when I was 23. And then I got into helping people buy their own home, investing, selling the home. And I partnered up with a mentor at that time who's now passed away a couple of years ago this September. He taught me everything he knew, and I was under his wing for the first 3 years or so. Like, I was really learning how to invest,
how did you cross paths with your mentor? How did that happen? This is a big topic.
Yeah. So this one, because I was looking for it, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I got into the business in real estate, joined a real estate company like everyone does, a bigger brand. And at that time, I was there for about 3 months. I'm 23 years old, took a beating on those first 3 months. I was taught how to cold call and door knock. The best training. And I don't blame the guy at that office at that time, because he was just older. I think he was like 70 or so, and he was about to leave the business. The best training Ryan, he's like, when you're cold calling, start in the middle, in the M's and the N's, because most realtors don't make it that far when they start at the A or the Z's. And so that was kind of like the best training I got. Didn't work well for me. Because I'm not a cold caller. I'm not a pushy sales guy. That's not who I am, right? And so just about to go back into car shows where I did quite well for 2.5, 3 years. And I get a fax at that time. And so about, again, almost coming up to 15 years ago, fax machines were still in. And it was a fax that mentioned, hey, free business development seminar. I go see it. And this guy the speaker happens to pick on me out of about 100 people. And I go see him the next day, and I say to him, look, I know you're selling a coaching program. It's my last, I think he was selling it for like $2,500 for the year. I go, it's my last $2,500. I'm going to give it to you, but please just don't lie to me. Like, just tell me what to do. Yeah. And I'm telling you, if I have to clean your toilets, I will, because I really want to succeed. And I'm not expecting this to all happen in a year. Like, I'm patient. I'm young. I'm okay. Like, I got lots of time. And he goes, Jas, look, the good vibe you and I have, similar to like you and I now, right? And he goes, look, let's just forget the coaching, join my team. And I'll really, really teach you what I know. He's at that time was doing it for 25 years himself. Simon Giannini is his name. And so him and I was under his wing, like I said, for the first about 3 to 4 years. And that's it, man. He taught me everything. Then I became his partner. We brought on a third partner for the last decade. We've been managing this team of 32 realtors. And as you said in the intro, and I appreciate it, and thank you for the shout out. We are the number 3 team in Royal LePage, Canada. We help facilitate about 650 transactions, man, a year.
That's great, man. That's amazing. So you said a few things. So everybody who's listening here, if we can unpack. So the number one thing that stands out was the skills that you took from each one of your paper route, CIBC, car sales, and then you reverse engineered them, cleaned them up, and then put them into what you're doing right now. That being said, when you talk about, humility, you basically went to a mentor and said, like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes, right? What do you think about the generation now coming into the business world? Because some people say, well, there's some entitlement, or, I don't want to work for free because I'm above that. Whereas you're like, no, like if I can get into the room with somebody who's where I want to be, I'll get into the room and I'll wash the room for them. How does that shift? Do you think that comes from your home, your upbringing, from your parents? Do you think that's somewhat, inside of you to begin with? And if that's not, and kind of, you can speak to yourself, but kind of play the devil's advocate here. Like if you didn't have that, can you accrue that skill or what's some things that, listeners that are listening could do to just kind of get them in that room with those specific people, which ties into how you do that so well. You've had great guests. You've been in the room with the Garys and you had the one lady from $1 Million Listing. I can't remember her name. Yeah, fantastic. You've had some really cool people. And when I notice on your face when you're dealing with these people, and everybody can go check out the videos, you're genuinely excited to be in the room with these people. You don't even try to be too cool about it. You're like, oh, I'm here. I'm like, you're smiling, and you can tell, like, they feel that energy, and there's that humility. So could you just, shed a little bit of light on all of that? It's a 26-part question, but that's the way I do things.
I really appreciate you noticing that. It's the same that I feel now. Like, I'm so blessed for you to want me on the podcast. Like, I don't forget these things, and I don't take them lightly. The fact that, like, you wanted me on your podcast, and even if it was your first one, I would feel so blessed to be on your first episode, let alone how many you've done and the guests that you've had. And that's why when I have guests on my podcast, you're right, I can hide it. I am excited, so I don't try to tone it back. I do think my humilities did come from my parents, to be honest with you. I'm one of three sons, 2 older brothers. Always a healthy reminder that you're closer to the bottom than you are to the top when you have 2 older brothers. Over loved me, if that even exists. I mean, the 2 older brothers watched over me at all times. My dad worked a lot. He was a cab driver, and my mom was a factory worker. And like my mother, who still doesn't really know the language well because she didn't even try to proactively learn it. She just went to the factory, worked on the assembly line for 25 years or something. And so when I think about where I am now, it's like, wow, like how far we've come, but it all started with them. And so when I got an opportunity to sit with someone who was going to teach me, there was humility in that. But the other part, Ryan, was I was so hungry. Like, I really wanted more. I felt like with car sales, I hit a ceiling, especially in the car sales business. Like, generally speaking, car sales or car salesmen and like women in the business, you're probably not like 6 figures, kind of 100, 120 is kind of the ceiling, especially when I was there. And those guys were there for 13, 14 years. And I just said, look, man, I don't want to be doing this in 14, 15 years. Still one of my favorite jobs and businesses in the world. I love the car business. It's one of the most exciting. People come to you, the characters in the dealership, the mechanics and the parts people, like amazing. But for me, there was just a ceiling. So I always wanted more. In terms of entitlement, I see it in some of the younger people, like the millennials, so to speak. I also see the other side of it. I have a copywriter and a part-time videographer. I have my full-time guy. He came on not as an intern, but my part-time videographer and my copywriter, they pretty much came on as interns, unpaid.
Yeah.
And I'm also seeing the other side. Like, they're not all the, like, look, I mean, there's people who are 60 that are still very negative and cynical, but there's people who are 60 who are very positive and have tons of energy. It's no different in that age group of 20 to 30. I mean, my copywriter came to me and said, Jas, I'll work here for 6 months, 7 months. Don't pay me a penny. Let me show you what I got. And then now I'm full time. My part-time videographer, Keegan, who's taping our conversation now, was like, look, man, I don't care what you pay me. Like, let me just get my foot in the door. So anyone listening or watching, look, you might need to make 50 connections and 50 outbound calls and emails, DMs, LinkedIn messages, Facebook messages, to reach out to people and say, look, do you mind if I do some work for you for free and let me show you what I got? And then, and you might go and nothing might come out of it. But at least you're working in the field that brings you the most passion and the most happiness. Like, I know I could just see and feel the energy from you again, Ryan, that you would do this stuff for free. In fact, some of it you probably do. And
100%.
You know what I mean?
My podcast essentially makes me no money, zero money.
Exactly.
I took on my first advertiser, which is Jordana Goldlist. She's in Toronto. She runs JHG Criminal Law. She's
okay.
I mean, she's like, her whole vibe of, she's one of the best criminal defense, and I love her opening line is, "I only deal with guns, drugs, and murder." And I had her on, and literally I seen her come down my Instagram one day, and I couldn't believe, she's got these sleeve tattoos, does not look like this, stereotypical lawyer. She has a lot of, like, you can tell she's got a certain warmth about her, but that street vibe. I just loved her whole vibe, and I reached out to her. Do you remember, you must have heard about that Bruce MacArthur case, right? About the serial killer you guys have. I got a sick obsession with true crime, but she was commentating, just like you reached out to me. I reached out to her and said, I just want to have you on my podcast. I had no reason why. I just said, love your vibe. Got back to me, and I kind of thought, I don't know if she will. Like, she really does well in what she does, but I took her on as an advertiser, and it was a heavy thing for me because I've had so many people reach out. But again, they have to understand the whole goal of the show, and I didn't create the show to come out and start making money with the show. I created the show to have a real big impact, and I know when you have impact, everything takes care of itself in the end anyway, and that's where you're talking. Sometimes you just got to get your foot in the door. That action alone, if we trace back to all the greats, if they trace everything back, sometimes they simply say, it was that moment I got one foot in the door, and they just barricaded through. And that was that.
It was, man. Like, when I met my mentor at that time, I told him, like, in the real estate business, everyone's looking for, like, from a realtor's perspective, when they join someone, they're looking for the highest split. Like, so if I sell a home, there's the commission that comes in, and the brokerage that they're licensed under is going to take a cut. And the realtor's thinking about it from the perspective, okay, so how much am I going to keep? I mean, I told my guy, I was like, I don't care how much you take. Like, for the first 5, 6, 10 deals, take it all. Just teach me. Like, I just want to learn, because I don't understand. I don't want to get sued. First of all, I don't want to get in trouble. And second of all, I don't know how to get clients, because I came from all the other places other than the paper route, where I had to go and get people to subscribe to the Toronto Sun or Toronto Star at that time. Everything else, they came to me. And so the shift, I didn't understand the shift and how to go about it. And I was like, just teach me that. Take it all. And we ended up doing a 50-50 split. And I can tell you now, like, that's made me hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the connections I now have, all because I was willing to give up more than I was getting.
It's skill. I like to call it skill equity. When you learn a skill, the long-term residuals off that skill, it's why I like real estate. Fun fact, and people on the podcast have heard me tell this story. I come from humble beginnings. I like my hair cut once a week. So at the age of 13, I learned how to cut my own hair. I saved the $20 that I would pay for each haircut, which accrued to $1,000 a year, which over 5 years was $5,000. So at 18, I bought my first shitty apartment condo, flipped it, made some good money on it, and I was off to the sales. But people don't understand. Like, I'm like, well, they're like, well, I have no money. I'm like, that's no excuse. You have money. You might have to start buying that stupid coffee or that. I'm still frugal and cheap to this day, man. Like, I love great quality things, but even my wife is like, dude, you're on a different level. I'm like, well, why would I go buy this when I could buy another apartment for that? Like, I don't understand this. Like, what is it? And that's just the way my mind has always thought, right? But having kids has changed everything, because they want certain things, but that's okay. But kind of going back into what you're saying, that skill equity that people need to understand. Like, maybe you guys take 10% more from your realtors that come in than the average broker for the split. But then what's that 10%? What are you giving them in terms of skill, knowledge, awareness, marketing materials? And that skill, it's going to live way beyond their work with you guys down the road, but they don't think about that.
Especially in today's day and age, like videographers, copywriters, graphic design people. Like, my videographer is going to cut a video, and I had to sit down with him last week and say, his name's Keegan, the part-timer. And I was like, Keegan, how come I'm not seeing your name at the end of the video? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, why isn't this directed or I don't even know the actual titles. I was like, but why doesn't it say your name? Like, use this platform to get to the next.
True.
And my copywriter, I'm like, look, there's like anyone who knows me knows I can't write more than a paragraph. Like I don't write even emails anymore. I generally write them in the subject line. Like if you look back to our emails back and forth, Ryan, like they're quick, man. And I'm glad yours were really quick because I don't have to read a lot then, right? And so I'm telling my copywriter, like, look, anyone who knows me knows I'm not writing these blogs. They're my thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm giving you the context, but can you please write your name? Because say something happens to me, God forbid, like use the platform while it's here. Use me as a trampoline and go to the next place. And so anyone who's listening and watching, like this in today's day and age with social media and really the internet, this thing called the internet, you really can get your word out a lot faster. And so working for free for 3 months, 6 months, or even a year, like, look, Ryan, I mean, you and I would probably go today, even now. I have a team of 32 realtors. I have a support staff of 8 people. I have kids. I have, facilitate the amount of transactions we do. But if Jeff Bezos called me and said, work for a year, I'm gone. I'm gone. Because what I learned in that year from, the top dog in the business world, like who cares about the money that I'm losing now? The value that I will be able to bring over the next decade is going to be a lot more that I can give back to the community. So, man, I really hope somebody who's watching and listening, like if you were on the fence after what Ryan and I are saying, like now it's a no-brainer. You got to make the jump. Just get in someone's wheelhouse and learn and learn.
You do. But for your copywriter and Keegan, shout out Keegan, when you edit this, I understand video editing really, really well. I want him to do a jump cut on this so he could be like Keegan. But that being said, and I like the glossy and blur effect too. But anyways, what I like about that is that you are somebody who's in essence, mentoring your copywriter and videographer to some degree. People who work for somebody else are still sometimes cleansed with this old school way of thinking in which they learned in school. And school, I have a big issue with the curriculum that's being taught in school because it's so damn dated that, our world is moving at the speed of light. But that being said, that they have to understand that they are a brand. If I come to Jas, even as an employee or an intern, I'm going to come to you with, for lack of better words, my balls hanging out and tell you why my balls are beautiful and shiny. And that I take a lot of pride in my balls. And I'm going to say, Jas, play tape 8, play tape B, play tape C, play tape D. And you're going to hire me, and I know you will. And the only reason you won't is because you're not a confident person and your ego is going to get in the way. And I don't want to work for you anyway. So it's a filter system for me, and it's a filter system for you. And people who are branding themselves, even like I tell people all the time, well, Ryan, I work at a job. Job security is bullshit. There's no job security. If a company restructures, you're done. You're lucky if they give you a watch. They probably won't even give you a watch. They'll give you an Apple iTunes card or some bullshit. But that's okay. But that being said, you have to understand the equity in which your name. So I look at everything for me as my last name, Ryan Holtz. But what does that mean? What value does that bring to whoever I'm interacting with at any given point? And I know that the bigger the problem I solve, as you know, the more money you make at the end of the day anyway. I go for the big ass problems. I don't want the bullshit problems. Give me the ones that are fucking like hurricanes. Because if I solve that problem, I'm in the game. Like you need me. You need me.
Look, man, I have a couple of buddies that I grew up with, and they asked me too. They're like, "What are you doing? What are you doing in terms of like why are you building up all these other brands and like other people?" And I'm like, man, it's I enjoy it, but I also know the importance of it because the more that I help, like you said, the more that I help bring every single one of my agents, like I help them and tell them. Like, you need to have your own podcast. You need to shoot content. You need to, a copywriter, or you need to write something. Yeah. And in the real estate business, and some of my friends will say, but Jas, then they'll leave you. But yeah, that's okay, man. Like, I'm looking for long-term, like, yeah, they leave. That's okay. Like, I would rather give that value, help them build out. Like, my director of sales and marketing, Laura, like she likes to write about.
Hey everyone, I know you are
enjoying this episode. As a friendly reminder, please leave a review where you are consuming this episode right now. I cannot stress how impactful and supportive this is for the show. We would really appreciate that. Also, please follow me at Ryan Holtz 1 on all platforms. If you would like to be a guest, or you have any questions or any feedback about the show, or would like some information on sponsorship opportunities for your business or for yourself, please email info@ryanholtz.ca. Remember, curiosity should always be your mandate. Much love, Team Holtz Squad. You went like 10 steps further. Was there someone, I know I can definitely see that Gary, Vaynerchuk, that's definitely an inspiration of yours. I know that you go around the internet kind of slicing up, hey, this person, I really love what they're doing, and then you make it your own. But is there one specific instance that you can kind of dial all this back to that said, okay, we gotta create REC. This has to go down?
My partner passed away. One of the three partners passed away September 2017. And like he literally, we didn't expect this. There's no signs of it. And took about 3 months to get out of that cloud, because he was not only my partner, he was the mentor. He treated me like a younger brother. I love this guy, and he passes away. And he was essentially the face, the guy who was on the stage. We weren't into Instagram and Facebook yet, not really doing it consistently, but starting to do some stuff. And so about 3 months after, so going right into 2018, I heard about I heard podcast, the word, I didn't even know what it was. And I started searching it, and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I don't have to be in front of a camera. I'm not that comfortable really, other than if I have some vodkas and then I get a little bit looser. But a podcast, I can kind of jive with that. Like it's like me being on a phone call, and I do 80% of my sales are done right from my office at this desk that I'm talking to you from, on Zoom or Skype video calls, because our investors and our purchasers right across Canada. And so I was like, I'm comfortable with that. And so the first 8 or 9 episodes were just me talking about what you need to do to buy and invest and sell and do it all on your own, like I mentioned earlier. And then I realized, you know what, I can get some guests on, because I love leadership. Like I love the Tony Robbins, the Jack Canfields, the Gary Vaynerchuks, the name like Simon Sinek's, all these guys. I learned that way. So I don't, like I mentioned, don't have the formal education, have the personal education. And you know what? I'm going to have as many of these guys as I possibly can on, and gals, and talk about their story. And hopefully someone listening or watching I'll get some awareness. They can be flies on the wall of the conversations that I'm having while I'm learning at the same time. And that's when I knew I was on to something, because I started to get the awareness. People were watching. And then I said, okay, let's, just before people started watching, I literally put the camera on so people could watch. And I got really comfortable. I have the part-time videographer on Tuesdays, Thursdays, have the camera on at all times when we record pod. So I'm very, very comfortable in that setting now. I actually enjoy it. I can't wait for it, because I learned how much content I can produce from one podcast episode.
Well, and also just your daily duties. I mean, just running a business, there's so much, you don't even realize what you're saying a lot of the time. It's coming out. It's hard to sit down, like, you call it a content calendar, like, what do you want to push out? But, I can tell, like, you're a guy that's somewhat freestyle too, right? One thing that
98% freestyling for me, buddy. 98%.
And I've had some guests on the show that they're completely process driven, but in like a 2019 kind of way. And I admire that, because process does allow you to be more efficient. Efficiency allows you to get more done. Get more done allows you to have bigger impact, right? I'm a big proponent of mental health and taking care of yourself as well, because I feel like there's no legendary person out there that didn't have longevity. So if you die, you're done. And we don't want to die, because then that's when your work stops, essentially, which is the whole legacy building aspect. That being said, you have these realtors. I want to talk about this new generation of business. I'm big on this uniform mentality. So a lot of realtors go out there, they rent or lease a car they can't afford. They lease a suit that they don't even own that was worn by some other guy that I don't know what, I don't even, who knows? His balls were all over, whatever. Freaks me out. I don't care about how much dry cleaning. There's certain things that are only for me. Okay. Yeah. And my clothing is one of them. But that being said, I look at even, one thing that caught my eye about you is, and watching some of your guys' videos, you guys don't come across pretentious at all. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I wear a suit a lot too. And I love that, it's great. I get that. But at the end of the day, I definitely can see that relatability with clients, customers, depending on who the audience you're talking to, they really look at you differently when you kind of come in, more casual, right? That being said, it could also work on the flip side. So how does dress code play for you? You're just in a shirt right now. You're not wearing a tie or nothing.
I got it branded REC. And so I'm going to wear my brand on my sleeve and my chest, literally. Because now, I'm on enough videos and podcasts and stuff like that where I want people to start to, kind of get the brand awareness. In terms of my realtors, it's all up to them. There really is no strict dress code per se in my office and for the realtors themselves. It's funny, the women on my team, they like fashion. And so I'm looking at some of the women in my team right now who are outside this room listening to our podcast, and they like to dress up a little bit more, and that's okay with us. Sometimes they come in with jeans. We ask if we have events, and they're so good. I haven't had a problem in over a decade. I've never had to talk to any of them. Not super ripped up jeans, only because our clientele is skewed to be a little bit older, because we deal majority of our real estate is investment real estate. But other than that, no profanity on like on the shirts and t-shirts and stuff like that. But other than that, very, very laid back, man. I'm a true believer in if you're comfortable in what you're wearing, literally, you'll be comfortable with what you're doing. If you're not comfortable, I stopped wearing ties probably about a decade ago because I just never was comfortable with them. I do a jeans, dress shirt, and a blazer if we're putting on an event. Sometimes, and then depending on the event, I might just be in an REC shirt because I'm so ultra comfortable in it. It is my uniform now. I wear it. I do get in trouble by my wife because sometimes I come home and go out and she's like, "Can you just wear something else?" I totally forget that we have it on. It's just one of the things. My media squad, they have, some of these guys come in shorts and jogging pants. My graphic designer, Steven, he's on vacation now, but shout out to him who does all the graphics. This guy comes in shorts and flip flops. He's comfortable. Great. It's to me, it's the attitude over the skills sometimes, right? So I'm really caring more about them being comfortable than them being in a suit or needing to be in a suit.
But do you think that image plays? Like, this is what I'm trying to understand is that, do you think given the business culture in general in the world today with, much more comfortable, as you said. I mean, you have billionaires that are just hoodie and jeans, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Steve Jobs that wore the same thing.
I don't think it plays. Like, for me personally, I just don't think it does, because I think when I'm speaking to somebody, they're waiting to what comes out of my mouth. I'm very, very confident, and I'm training my agents to concern themselves with the body language as well as what's coming out of their mouth, not the way that they're dressed, especially now going in 2019, where I just don't see a lot of people looking at it from that perspective. Like I said to you, we're 7 blocks away from Drake's house and his new home that's being built. It's in one of the most affluent areas in Toronto.
It's in Bridle Path, right?
Is that bang on?
Is it still not done?
I don't think it's completely. I see boards around it still.
You know who I like about? He has a certain designer. I can't remember the architect. What's his
Ferris Rafali.
This guy, I do not know him at all, but the way he brands himself, this guy's got like the pure mystery thing going down. Like I'm like, who the hell is this guy wearing these tight ass pants, man? Who's kind of just chilling. And I'm like,
trying to get him on the podcast. I've been really trying to get him on. I'm going to work. I haven't been as consistent with him, to be honest with you, as I've been with others, with other guests that I've been trying to get on. But look, I mean, right down the street at this office, REC is under Royal LePage signature umbrella. There's 1,000 realtors. We're number 4 or 5 in the whole Toronto real estate board, which is the biggest in North America. Yeah. And multi-million-dollar homes are sold every single day out of this office. And majority of the guys are just in jeans and a dress shirt.
I love it. I love it, man. I love it. No, I love it. In terms of real estate, people that are trying to enter into real estate, there's so much scam artists. There's so much crap out there. Get rich on real estate. Get my program. Get this and that. For me, there's only been 3 ways to make money: portfolio, passive, and earned income. Those are the only 3 legal ways, according to the Canadian Revenue Agency or the IRS, that will not get you locked up for creating wealth. Some people have their own ways. I don't want to talk about that. That's their business. But it legitimately into real estate. How does somebody get into real estate? Like, what would you say if somebody says, and I know it depends on their situation, if they have a job and they just want to kind of try to make some money passively, or they wanting to take real estate full time, become a realtor, or do they want to develop? Like, in your experience through all the years you've been in this business, to come into the real estate game now in 2019, what would be your best door or avenue that you would suggest to people?
So I'm a little biased. I'm going to speak about Toronto specifically, born and raised here. I truly believe it's one of the best places to invest, and solely on the reason that
I'm going to cut you off there. Every Torontonian is so hyper obsessed with their city. They're like, there is no Canada, it's Toronto. You guys are all some narcissistic maniacs out there.
In my opinion.
I know.
And here's why, though. Because there's 150,000 people coming in, and we have a huge housing crisis. Like, this is getting really bad now, because for the 150,000 people that are coming in, we need 50,000 households. On a good year, we've only done about 37,000. And so the city is actually making it very, very difficult. And this is not by any means a political rant. I never go down that path anyways. But it's just the fact that it takes 7 years from application to the shovel to go into the ground. That's way too long. And we have way too many people coming in. And so knowing that, the strategy that I like to implement the most is, starting off with mindset, is buy and hold long term, because then you're not worried about the quick buck and the ups and downs in real estate, because real estate will go up and down, but in general, it will always go up over time. And so knowing that, I would probably recommend a small investment of a pre-construction condo, like a pre-built condo.
Oh, interesting.
The down payment structure is always 20% as an investor, and it's paid out over a 2.5-3 year period. The neat thing with it is that it becomes a forced savings plan. So if you don't even have a lot of money right now, but it's forced, because once you sign the contract, after a 10-day cooling period, 10-day due diligence period that we have in our province here, you're locked in. And now you got to come up with, so it's 5% within 30 days, 5% in 6 months, 5% in a year to a year and a half, final 5% when the building gets built. Because it's forced upon you, you'll make those installments.
True.
You're taking advantage of price increases over time as well. And then when the building gets built, because of the vacancy rate historically being under 2%, we're sitting under 1% in 2019 of August. And so we have multiple offers on a daily basis for rentals. So somebody will, average one bedroom of 550, call it, square feet with parking is $2,450 as we sit here today. That's going to get worse before it gets any better.
The condo, but Toronto's it's crazy, man. I look at the boxes that are getting sold downtown Toronto and the price. I'm like, well, you paid $850,000 for that box? I'm like, does that include parking? They're like, no. I'm like, what?
Downtown Toronto right now, parking's at about $100,000, call it. On an average, it's about $100,000. Yeah.
My God,
So I just shot a video of a $14 million penthouse in Hudson Yards in New York.
Okay.
Yeah. $14 million. you divide the square footage, price per square foot works out to be, I think it's about $3,400 price per square foot. In Toronto proper, like downtown Toronto, we're at about $1,200 price per square foot. Yeah. Hong Kong's at $3,500 to $4,000. London's over $4,000 price per square foot. Paris is up there. Manhattan, like. When any of those guys come from outside the country, like they laugh. They say, wow, real estate's on sale here because the amount of people we have coming in, it's only going to get higher and higher. It's just a matter of locking in sooner than later. Now, I don't want that to sound like you got to buy now. You buy when it's right for you. And when you want to make sure you put some money down. But I loved what you said earlier. Like, you figured it out. Like, you're like, man, I'm just going to stop buying. I'm going to stop paying for haircuts. I'm going to go I'm going to learn how to fade myself.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? Like there's value in that, right? Or what I see a lot of investors do is, look, partner up with other investors, do a joint venture. Owning 25% of an investment property is better than zero. Get 3 other partners, partner up together, and figure it out.
Now, is a home an asset or a liability? Think really quick about this.
Yeah, so are you living in it?
Yes.
It's a liability.
Oh, see. You know what, though? You know how many people would say it's an asset? It's crazy. You know your stuff. Because they jump quick and say, it's an asset.
That's hell. If you're living in it or not. If you're living in it or not, right?
That's where I knew you're going to go down the right answer anyway, because that's the biggest question after that question. Because, I mean, when somebody's living in it, I'm like, that's not an asset. It's costing you property taxes, maintenance, mortgage, interest. Like, no. If you're renting it out, and you're getting some income, now we're talking it's an asset. This is why I like real estate, though. I'm obsessed with it. We'll link up when I'm in Toronto. Normally, instead of last year just with the kids, I'm in Toronto like at least once a month. So with clients.
Wow. Okay.
In 2017, I think I was in Toronto 47 times, man. I was on an airplane 86 times. I was in the Toronto airport 3 times in one day. Fact, I was coming back from vacation with my family. The air crew that flew us from Toronto to Edmonton was the same ones that brought us back out for my business trip going into New York. And the guy was like, didn't I just see you? So I was in flip-flops and like a Tommy Bahama shirt the one trip, and then I came back with the formal, all within like a 10-hour period. It was crazy.
Well, I heard you say Lexus of Oakville, so I figured you do some business with the guys on West.
No, I actually don't do any with them. There's a guy named Everald Reed that sells cars from Everald Reed, really good guy. But I do a lot of the TADA, the Toronto Auto Dealers Association, all those guys. But Jas, as we wrap it up, man, did you have any questions for me at all? I always love to ask the guests if they have any questions for me, or if there's any like final sentiments you want to say or anything like that, man.
Look, I wanted to ask, what made you start your podcast? Like what really made you go down the podcast route and not just shooting videos, for example?
You know, it's a great question. I've always been fascinated with media. I really love journalism. I love telling a story. It's funny because marketing now is becoming sexy, and everybody's a social media marketer and a videographer and a content creator and a digital strategist and a bullshit. Marketing is simple. Can you get the proper fucking product in people's fucking hands when they don't even know they need it, but make them feel good while fucking doing it? And can you get it done in a nice manner that wants them to come back? If anybody tells you marketing is any different, they're bullshitting. It's the most simplest concept. Don't screw people over. That being said, I like media. I wanted to, I had an opportunity to have my own little TV/radio show. I've done a lot of commentating on TV and radios and stuff like that. But given the nature of traditional media and how it's, just taking a tank, I said, I want a certain style of show. If I was to go work at like a CBC or have like a little, weekly segment, I have a producer telling me what I can and can't say. It's all red taped. And I'm like, wait a sec, bro, you're a marketer. Like, dude, you can go direct to your audience like now. Yeah. And, it was a hard where I said, do I want to have a vlog on YouTube and really make that my source, or do I want a podcast? And I do like the podcast because anybody can consume it. It's passive listening. And I don't want to interrupt your attention. I don't like the kind of marketing that interrupts you because now you're going to be pissed off with me. The podcast is always there. I'm always smiling for you. Whenever you want to come back and listen to me, I'm right there. Just press play. And I do like the podcast. The podcast for me, though, I've treated much differently than somebody starting a podcast. I've made this like, I don't even want to call it a podcast. It's a complete show. It's a show in the sense of I'm going to dig deep inside of my guests' minds, ask them really ridiculous, weird questions, and have the audience really get to see other sides of the guest. Because if you look at even you when you get interviewed or other guests and they have 10 other interviewers, everybody's asking the same damn questions. I like to really understand, like, I get your professional accolades, but the truth be told is my audience can go and Google you and watch all that shit. I want to understand what you eat for breakfast. I want to know if you're like boxers or briefs. I want to know, do you really like vodka, or am I being stereotypical and saying you like Crown and water? Like, I need to know these things. I need to know these things, Jas. I mean, I grew up with a lot of brown people. I mean, I know the culture really well. My wife is Middle Eastern. You know what I mean? Like, so really I get it.
Really to that point. I generally have coffee for breakfast. I'm a boxers guy, always have been, and I do love vodka.
and in terms of the climate of the world in general, do you feel like we're in a good position, given what's going on in the United States, what's going on just in the world? Like, social media, I don't think is bad. A lot of people say it's had a negative impact on our society. I disagree. It's only really broadcasting and amplifying. If you're a dickhead, you're going to come across more of a dickhead with social media.
It's the same thing with money, right? Same shit with money. Like, if you were a dickhead before, now you have money, you're going to become more of it. If you're a nice, kind person and now you got money, I think it just kind of brings out your true colors. In general, with the climate, politically, around the world and with this, like what's happening in the States and even in our own country, right? Like, with there's some people who love Trudeau and people who don't. I gotta really, truly be honest and authentic with you, man. I don't spend a lot of time watching and or listening any of that stuff. And I truly believe like none of them are just gonna have an effect on my growth in my little world. I always reference as a kid that there was a reason one of my favorite cartoons was Bobby's World, because I love the opening, Howie Mandel's, because the opening, they used to open up his head and all these people. I truly just feel like that, right? Like I'm trying to affect the people in my circle and anyone who kind of comes across my path, and I'm not going to let Trudeau or Trump or Putin or anyone like that affect that. And so you're definitely right with social media. We're feeding it. Like, I have a friend who says, man, I can't stand what's in my Facebook feed. Turn it off.
But he's also they have to understand that algorithm is based on what he's searching or partaking in. Like,
somewhere else.
Do you want to know what's so funny? One day I stood up, I was doing a keynote in Vegas, and I like to give examples. So I asked one gentleman, I said, could I have your phone? And so I said, and I kind of felt bad because I should have made the disclaimer of I'm going to go into your Facebook and see. All I seen was like midget porn coming down, and his history was terrible. So he got so embarrassed. He's like, I don't know how that got there. I said, well, sir, I want to introduce you to retargeting and remarketing. You do know I'm a marketing person. I can market to you based on shit you searched, right? It wasn't probably my greatest moment, but man, I just kind of thought, and if you looked at anyway, I won't get into too much, but it was the audience definitely enjoyed it, but man, afterwards that event organizer, I don't think will ever have me back as a speaker. It just was not. It was awkward. You say some great points as we wrap it up again. I mean, this has been absolutely amazing. So everybody listening, I mean, what Jas is saying at the end here, I think is probably one of the biggest points he's made throughout the whole podcast is he's not really dialed in and focused on what other people are, saying, doing, but taking more of the control into his own hands. I love that visual of having a lot of people coming into your brain. I think in order to do what you want to do in life, you have to stay focused, and you have to do an amazing job of curating the human beings that you're interacting with on a daily basis. You are what you eat, and you are who you hang around with, and that's just the straight up truth. That being said, man, Jas, how can people reach out to you? And then before you get into that, I have one last question because I think this can be of huge benefit. How do people get access? When you're trying to get guests on, like you've talked to some amazing people. You did the empathy wines, you talked to Gary, and you're not just, however you're getting them, I can tell the interaction is a little different. You're really getting them on a vulnerable type of level. Like they're not, I know they do the whole PR thing and talk to my PR and all this crap. But when you're getting these guests, when you actually get in the door, they're giving you a great vulnerability side. How do people who want to get great guests get access? If somebody wants to pitch something to you, how do you like to get pitched to? Like, how does somebody access you?
Are you saying just kind of pitch to me personally kind of thing?
Pitch to you personally, just in general, the concept of pitching, right? Because there's a fine line between annoying the shit out of somebody.
Yes. Being authentic. And I think that's a mindset thing, starting there. And then what I would tell anybody in sales in general, and if you're getting guests, is following up. Like if you didn't reply back to me as fast as you did, I would have followed up. Now, I wouldn't have annoyed the shit out of you. Yeah. I would have followed up. You feel it in your gut. I probably would have followed up within about 45 to 60 days. And so I'm it's how I got Gary. It's how, Empathy Wines was funny because I was at their office and asking the partners, Nate and John, just kind of on the spot. That just came out of nowhere. Any of the $1 million listing guys that I've got, and gal Tracy was probably one of my favorite. Just love her till this day. She's so engaging and always wanting to talk. But Ryan and Josh Altman, I'm working with Josh Flagg's team as well. And it's just consistent follow-up, man. Like, so I'll DM them and message them tonight. I'll go home, I'll spend some time with my family, and then I'm going to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours just messaging.
Good for you. I love it, man. I love it. That's so great. It's just good old-fashioned hard work. Jas, how can everybody reach out to you? What are you about? And give them all the details so that people listening can go and check you out, man.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate you allowing me to do that, Ryan. Thank you again. And I could tell why you wanted to do this podcast. You are definitely, I've been on about 10 to 12 podcasts in the last 60 days. And the questions that you brought, the energy that you brought is definitely second to none. And so
what's funny, Jas? I never ever get it. I don't have any, I write notes as you're talking. I don't ever put any pre-scripted questions. I do my digital deep dive on you. And then I let the conversation goes where it goes.
Thank you for that, man, because it really brought out my best. As you had me on my feet and my toes the whole time. And sometimes I can get really robotic about it because I know the question that's coming next, but it wasn't that from you. So thank you for that, because I think the world, and this is going out to the world, is going to be thankful for all the content that you put out. So thank you for that. In terms of getting to me, look, man, I'm putting out as much content as I possibly can for the world to see from a real estate, entrepreneurship, and leadership perspective. I'm doing it on all platforms. The place to go for my long form content would be youtube.com/REC experience. And if you want to see my daily stuff personally, just check me out on Instagram. It's Jas, Jas Takhar, TAKHAR, number 13, 13, Jas Takhar 13. And that's where you kind of see my daily stuff. That's where I'm putting on most of my content. And if you ever want to get a hold of me or anyone on my team from a real estate perspective, it's info at reccanada.com. Info at reccanada.com.
Perfect, man. Well, thank you for coming on the show. Everybody who's listening, just a friendly reminder, please write a review, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever you like to consume your podcasts. You know what my spiel is. Curiosity should always be your mandate. Jas, man, thanks so much for coming on.
This has been the REC Experience Podcast with Jas Takhar, an REC Canada production.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching and listening. Please take a second right now to subscribe and follow us on whatever podcast platform you're watching or listening. It means the world to me. Thank you.